You didn't choose wrong. You chose safety. And maybe no one ever told you that clearly, because safety sounds good. It sounds mature. It sounds responsible. It's the choice that gets approval, the choice that avoids conflict, the choice that seems to prevent pain. But every form of safety comes with a price, and that price is almost always charged in silence. You wake up, do what you promised, answer messages, complete tasks, pay bills. On the outside, everything works. On the inside, something feels misaligned. It's not exactly sadness. It's not a lack of gratitude. It's a subtle emptiness, a kind of tiredness that rest doesn't fix, a feeling of being present in the right place but absent inside yourself. You look at your own story and find flawless justifications. You were prudent. You were realistic. You avoided risks that could have taken you down. You chose the stable path, the safe job, the acceptable option. You did what you were supposed to do. And still, on some days, it feels like life is happening near you, not with you. Maybe you call it a phase. Maybe you say that's just estrés. Maybe you think that when things calm down, you'll feel again. But there's a detail that keeps bothering you. It's not the world that feels heavy. It's you that feels too light to fully be yourself. Safety does this slowly. It doesn't break you. It doesn't humiliate you. It doesn't scare you directly. It simply teaches you to negotiate small pieces of your truth. And because they're small, you accept. First, you postpone, then you reduce, then you replace. You trade desire for obligation. You trade a dream for a goal. You trade impulse for a plan. And you call it maturity. The curiosity that once pulled you toward things starts showing up less. The creativity that used to appear without permission starts asking for approval. That light courage, the courage to try without guarantees, becomes a distant memory. And the most dangerous part is that this starts to feel normal. Not truly normal, but common. And common is just what many people tolerate. At some point, you realize you've chosen safety so many times that you forgot how to choose anything else. You see people creating, risking, changing, failing, starting over, and you feel something between envy and confusion, as if that were a language you once spoke but forgot. Then comes the question that hurts. Why doesn't this feel possible for me? And the answer you give yourself is unfair. You call yourself weak. You call yourself late. You call yourself untalented. But the problem isn't incapacity. It's training. You trained your entire life to avoid discomfort, and safety rewarded you for it. Safety always speaks with a calm voice. It says, not now. It says, this isn't the moment. It says, be sensible. And time passes quietly. You don't lose everything. That would be obvious. You lose momentum. You lose spontaneity. You lose the feeling that your life has flavor. And when you try to feel something real, you realize you're numb. There's another hidden cost. Approval. When you choose safety, people applaud. You become responsible, sensible, adult. But to keep that image, you start editing yourself. You say less of what you think. You ask less of what you want. You adjust your size to fit, and slowly, your need for acceptance makes you invisible. You keep smiling, but inside, something is asking for air today. You didn't choose wrong. You chose safety. And there's still time to understand how much it's costing you. Here is the part almost no one explains about safety. It doesn't show up as immediate pain. It shows up as absence. Absence of enthusiasm. Absence of curiosity. Absence of meaning. You keep functioning, but something in you no longer participates in your own life. It's like being present in the right place, but always late for yourself. There is a huge difference between surviving and living. Safety is excellent at keeping you standing. It organizes, structures, protects. The problem begins when it becomes the only criterion for deciding, when every choice passes through what seems more stable, more predictable, more accepted. At that point, safety stops being care and becomes limitation. You start believing that wanting more is ungrateful, that desiring something different is irresponsible, that listening to that inner restlessness is immaturity. So you learn to ignore that voice. At first, it insists, then it softens, and one day, it barely speaks, not because it died, but because it understood it would not be heard. When that happens, something shifts quietly. You begin to feel strange inside your own routine. Everything is right on paper, but wrong in your body. You achieve things, reach goals, solve problems, and still you feel like you arrive somewhere that doesn't feel like yours, not because it's bad, but because it isn't true. This is the real cost of safety. It doesn't take anything from you by force. It simply convinces you not to use who you are. It trades intensity for stability, truth for acceptance, life for control. And it does this so politely that you thank it. You call it responsibility, maturity, growth. But there is an important difference between growing and shrinking to fit. Growth expands. Shrinking accommodates. Safety asks for accommodation. It values continuity, not authenticity. It rewards those who don't change too much, don't question too much, don't feel too much. Over time, you learn that being yourself is exhausting and being predictable is comfortable. But comfort is not peace. Real peace is alignment. It's when what you do matches what you feel. An alignment always demands risk. Not external risk, but emotional risk. The risk of disappointing someone. The risk of failing publicly. The risk of not being approved. Safety protects you from all of that, but charges a price that is too high. It charges your truth. You become reliable, but distant from yourself. You become competent, but disconnected. You become functional, but empty. And that emptiness doesn't show up every day. It shows up in specific moments. When you slow down, when something moves you unexpectedly, when a song, a conversation, or a silence passes through you. In those moments, you realize you didn't choose wrong. You simply chose safety too many times. And now you miss something you don't quite know how to recover. It's not nostalgia for a specific past. It's longing for a version of you that never had space to exist. The cruelest part is that no one warned you. On the contrary, they praised you. They called you sensible, responsible, adult, and to maintain that image, you began to edit yourself. You spoke less of what you thought. You asked less of what you wanted. You adjusted your size so you wouldn't disturb, until, little by little, your need for acceptance made you invisible. This is the cost almost no one notices. Not failure, not collapse, not disaster, but the slow replacement of who you are with who felt safer to be. And that, even without immediate pain, weighs. Here is the hardest part to accept. Safety is not the villain. It has its place. It protects, organizes, sustains. The problem begins when it becomes the only criterion, when every decision passes through fear disguised as prudence, when living without risk feels more important than living with truth, because living only by what is safe does not prevent pain. It only delays life. And delayed life does not disappear. It collects interest. It charges later. It charges through unasked questions, untried paths, versions of you that never had the chance to exist. It charges through a quiet wait that appears when you finally stop. There is no magical moment when you wake up ready. There is no perfect turning point. There is only the moment you realize that continuing like this is also a choice, and that this choice has a real cost, even if no one talks about it. Maybe today you don't know exactly what you want. That's okay. Clarity doesn't always come first. Sometimes the beginning is simply noticing what you avoid, what you postpone, what you label impractical but keeps returning. That already says a lot. Every time you choose safety over truth, something in you learns to stay silent, and prolonged silence is not peace. It's absence of self. Real peace is not avoiding conflict. It is aligning with who you are, even when that feels frightening. You didn't choose wrong. You chose safety. The question now is not about the past. It's about how much longer you are willing to pay for it. Because the price keeps running, even when you pretend not to see it.